Welcome to Real Estate in Real Time. I'm Woody Zimmerman here with Mark Skabowski of Remax Lakes. Welcome to the show.
Here we are. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm still recovering.
Yeah.
I stayed up all night on the election thing.
Yeah, I did. Well, I stayed
that was
up
this week.
I stayed up till about midnight, and then I'll tell you what. I stayed up till about midnight, and then I got up at my normal 5:30 in the morning, and my internet was out. And so,
Oh no!
yeah, and I'm like, what is going on here?
Oh,
Somebody
no.
doesn't want me to know.
No,
Or
I
something happened.
being the numbers guy that I am.
Yeah.
It's interesting to watch the statistical part.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, "What are you doing?
Mhm.
You know, it's already happened. They voted, right? I mean, we all voted. You're just waiting,
Right.
to see what happens. But it's intriguing.
It is.
To see how they analyze county by county.
Yeah, how
You
they
know,
break it down
And then the polling that they did, you know, on gender, race, age, all of those things, they could break those statistics down to see, you know, how it's changed previous or compared
right to go back to
previous
2020,
elections.
2016. I mean, yeah, it's neat to.
It's amazing to see all
It
of that,
is.
and you know, statistics are great. They're
Right.
great,
Yeah.
and then what do they say? You know, numbers don't lie. You
Yeah.
know, liars change the numbers, or whatever that is. But
Yeah.
you know, nobody was calling it early, which I appreciate. The fact is, they were waiting till statistical probability.
Yeah.
Which, you know, when you deal with statistics, it's important that you have confidence in the numbers that you're doing.
Right.
You don't want to predict. We don't want to have the Dewey wins the election,
Yeah.
you know, news page.
Right,
So I really was afraid that we may be a long time before we knew who was going to be the president. Unfortunately, it happened, and the popular vote went one way, and the electoral college vote went, you know, the same way. Hallelujah. Faith
Yeah.
in our democracy is reserved.
Yeah, I agree. It was it was very interesting to watch, and I actually thought it would probably be a week before we had the results in. So
Yeah.
I was glad to see that it was in real time that,
Yeah.
that we were watching the results. And
Well,
so
you know,
that was good to see.
technology-wise, we should be able to answer the questions
Yeah.
sooner because of the technology. But yet,
Right.
if we had to take, you know, the hanging Chad days,
Oh,
of,
yeah, of,
you know, the Bush,
Bush and
election,
Gore,
Bush and
yeah,
Gore,
yeah.
you know, and it took how long in Supreme Court battles and this, that, and the
Yeah.
other thing. But hey, we're moving on. So today, I thought we would talk about how does an election impact the housing market.
Hey, well, that's a
Isn't
really
that
good
great?
question. No, that is
Isn't that great?
that is a good question because I mean, even here in radio, it's like we have partners,
Right.
and it's like, you know, you talk to them in July. Well, let's wait till after the
Right,
election. I
right.
mean, everybody they focus on the election.
Everybody has been waiting on, you know, at the beginning of the year, people were waiting on interest rates when it came to housing.
Right, right.
And rates have dropped, and they're back up again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that is because there's uncertainty. And anytime you have uncertainty, people are afraid to act.
Mm-hmm.
We all are. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and I think I've talked about Colin Powell before. I read his book. I've got a PowerPoint presentation I've used. It's on leadership. But if you wait for 100% information,
Yeah,
you'll
you'll-
never make a decision.
Right.
You'll be locked up.
Yeah.
So the idea is you get a majority of the information, make a decision, and then you learn from that decision going forward. Hopefully you make a good one.
Yeah.
Right? So uncertainty impacted the housing market throughout the year. What the Fed's going to do, what's the climate in Washington going to be, all of those things. Indiana, we're pretty much, you know, very conservative state.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot of change in Indiana, but at the federal level, what's regulation going to do?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess one of the questions is, does an election slow down the housing market? And these stats, I've subscribed to a website. It's called Keeping Current, and it's about real estate. So these are numbers from their folks. So from October to November, home sales decreased by 9.8% in a typical year and 15% in an election year.
Wow.
So I would say,
People.
last week we talked about days on market, things taking longer to sell.
Right.
What does that mean? People aren't buying as many. Now we're starting to get more inventory, but they're sitting on the market a little bit longer. I think that that uncertainty with interest rates, and it's not just the election, but it all comes into that big bundle.
Right.
I think that impacts.
Yeah.
I think that it does. That
Right.
people hold off making a decision until there's a reasonable expectation of certainty.
Right. I mean, I totally believe that, but honestly, I think like right now, I think I think we're gonna have a slow December and probably a slow January.
Yeah.
But I think when it ramps up, I think it's really going to ramp up.
And I would agree with that. And so one of the other, what happens to mortgage rates?
Yeah,
in
right.
an election year.
Yeah.
Typically, from July to November, rates have decreased 72% of the time. This year, they have gone down.
Mm-hmm.
We were as low as 6% in September. Right now, in November, we're back to 7 and 8. We're back up. Again, that's that uncertainty. You look at the T-bill, the 10-year note. I did talk to a lender because I've said numerous times, why in the world are rates doing what they're doing? I did talk to a local lender, asked them, how do you guys set your rates? What
Right.
impacts? And they look at the 10-year T-bill. So that treasury note, that's
Okay.
what they look at.
Okay.
And right now, that rate has continued to go up. So that gives me something to look at when I'm watching CNBC in the morning, because they always put the rates. And this week, the T-bill, it was up a couple of tenths. So I expected mortgage rates to go up again.
Okay, I
and
see.
they did. They
Yeah.
went up to 7 and 8.
Right.
So, bottom line, there's a lot of factors that influence mortgage rates, the uncertainty in Washington, all of those things. And after the break, we can talk about, hey, maybe going forward, what do we think is going to happen as a result of the election?
All right, sounds good. You're listening to Real Estate in Real Time. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to Real Estate in Real Time. I'm Woody Zimmerman here with Mark Skabowski of Remax Lakes, and we're talking about, does an election slow down the housing market? And it does, but for a couple of points that you have made. Uncertainty is one thing, and then the other thing is interest rates, and they have ticked up just like what the stats have said.
Right, the stats have said that's going to happen. So I guess the real answer is, and the million-dollar question is, what happens afterwards? So do more homes sell after an election? Home sales tend to bounce right back, and 82% of the time they've gone up the following year. So the statistics say in 2024 they're predicting, this is experts, right, air quotes, experts, 4.6 million homes sold in 2024, going to be 5.2 million homes sold in 2025. So you're going to see more homes sell.
Right.
Go back to the inventory issue that we've had. There was no inventory, so that was tamping down the number of homes that were going to sell. There wasn't anything to buy.
Right.
Now we're seeing more inventory, so you would expect, despite the election, I think we would have had an increase next year anyways, maybe lower prices, but an increase in number of homes sold. I think that the election, that certainty, get mortgage rates tamped down a little bit.
Right.
And I think you're going to see 2025, we're going to be almost back to normal. 24, we're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
And I think 2025 is going to lead us to that. So I guess one of the other questions that was asked out of this study, what happens to home prices after an election? So the answer, prices have risen 88% of the time in the year following an election. This year, 88% of the time. Now, they don't give in the stat here, they don't say how much. Could be 1/10, right?
Right.
Now I'm a pundit,
Yeah.
right? Well, home prices go up 88% of the time. Well, they went up half of 1%. Well, but I'm still right.
Right.
Right? They went up.
Yeah.
I'm not incorrect. So this year, home prices are projected to continue to go up into 2025, about 2.5%. This year, when we did our stat show last week, we were like 4% year over year, back to more normal for our county.
Yeah.
So this is national, 2.5%. I think we're probably going to be that 3 to 4 in our county. We're going back to that more normal number. So is it the result of the election? Is it who won, who lost? I think just the fact that it's done impacts.
Right.
The fact that it's over.
But this particular election, what a lot of it was about the economy, and that's what this is.
Yeah, and it goes back to me. Who was it? Was it Bush? Where it's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
And yet, what were we running on? We were running on every issue but. I mean, it's economy, immigration for a lot of folks.
Right.
Border security.
Yeah, border security. Right.
And what's going on? Inflation is still there, and it's high prices and housing affordability and all of those things that people keep telling us the economy is chugging along. the stats, but then they revise them the next week. The jobs report,
Right.
the last jobs report. Well, they revised August down, they revised September down. Can we trust the numbers that we're seeing coming out? That's where the average Joe, like me, is going, what?
Yeah.
How can it be so rosy, and yet it sure doesn't feel rosy when gas prices are still really high,
Right.
when food costs are still really high, when housing is still really high.
Right. Well, typically Republicans, they like to lower taxes. It puts more money into the pockets of the people. And what do when they have money in their pocket? They spend
They
it.
spend it, and,
And
it's
then-
not coming from the government.
Yeah, and
it's
then-
not a freebie.
And then it creates jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then that gets the economy thriving.
That gets the engine going.
Yeah.
And housing is a big part of that. So I think that's where the housing market, and again, everybody's got to have somewhere to live.
Yeah.
Whether you own or whether you lease,
Right.
we all need somewhere to live.
Mm-hmm.
So the housing market is an integral part of our national economy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an integral part of how people feel about the country in general and about the economy. If you're struggling to make your house payments, or you'd like to buy but you can't buy because they're too high, prices are too high, and interest rates are too high, you've got a different outlook on what's going on. And even in the first presidency for President Trump, it was the stock market. The economy's great, the stock market's great. Well, the economy was okay, but we had COVID. Right?
Yeah, right,
How do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Right.
That was hopefully once in a lifetime
100
event.
years,
Every
yeah.
100 years
Yeah.
you have to deal with something like that. But the fact is, the economy has not moved forward like it probably should. Inflation has been sticky. It's been hard to get prices down, which common sense says once people have got a price increase, what are you going to give it back? So you've had to pay higher wages. Guess what? We're going to take a pay cut this year rather than give everybody a pay raise.
Yeah, no.
That's
not gonna be done.
That's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Yeah.
So once prices are up, it's hard to get them back down. What I can say in the housing market is let the natural progression, let that inventory start to flow in, and we're starting to see it more and more. Let interest rates start to settle down. Let get some certainty around the election and what the expectations are going to be coming out of the federal government. And I think we'll see the housing market take off again. It's not going to skyrocket like COVID.
Yeah, no.
But I think you're going to see more people engaged in it. I think you're going to see more first-time home buyers jumping back in to the market just because lease prices are really high. Renting is really high. And I believe that the regulations that were put in force back after the crash have enabled the lending system to do good loans, to not do dumb loans like we did, which got us into the situation
That
we
was
were in
bad.
the prior crash.
No, that was bad. All right, really good information here today. Your contact info?
Sure, website, skabowskiteam.com, phone numbers 574-527-0660. You can always email me at mark@skabowskiteam.com.
All right, very good. You can continue this conversation with Mark. Make sure you reach out. You've been listening to Real Estate in Real Time. Have yourself a wonderful weekend.